we know the SABC needs help, but what form that lifeline will be, but what will that lifeline be to ensure that it becomes a sustainable, profitable national broadcast? It's still not clear. We have ever been joined this morning by the Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Solly Malatsi to discuss some of the options that have emerged. It was in a parliamentary reply this week where the Minister answered a question saying that there are various options on the table, from some form of tax directly from taxpayers that gets ring-fenced by SARS and Treasury to go directly to the SABC, but also the possibility of a streaming levy for those who subscribe to local and international streaming services. Some of that revenue or that subscription being channeled to the SABC. Just a reminder, before your hackles get raised, forms of proposals at the moment. Minister of Communication, Solly Malatsi, really appreciate your time. We do know that it's not just a South African phenomenon, that issues around collecting of TV licenses, which has dwindled in South Africa to near trickle status, it's not been... It's not just a South African problem. If you look at issues with the BBC, for example, in the UK, also issues of income generation, licenses not finding a vatplek, a place with UK TV viewers at the moment. So it's not just a South African issue of not being able to generate income from TV licenses.
Good morning, Lester, and to all your listeners. Absolutely. I think the big debate and the big challenge that we are grappling with is when you look at the TV license model. It has clearly not been working, and that manifests itself in the low compliance rate in terms of payment and even further in terms of collections. So when you also look at global trends are moving towards what are other avenues that could help in boosting public broadcasters, funding, particularly because of the public mandate that they have. The sole reliance just on, the state grant and subsidies is insufficient to position them to be in a stronger, competitive and financially viable position. So there are different explorations, just looking in terms of what's happening in different countries, whether it's Denmark, whether it's Europe, where new models have been introduced. But I must emphasize, in principle, personally, I am against the notion of additional taxation on the South African public, because we are already, as it is, overtaxed. So it would be looking at a method that aligns with, the TV license model, not necessarily a new addition into the taxation process. Yeah. The other thing that is of debate, because it's a new territory for all countries, it's looking at, the audiovisual spaces in terms of, what is the best way. You want the investments to remain in the country, of course, but what is the contribution that can be made towards media services or even media development by these services that are existing in the country. In some countries, you've got a portion dedicated towards producing and production of local content. It's also applicable in our case, but in some dispensation they look at a total contribution from annual revenues that these media services are generating in the countries that they are operating. So at this stage, it's trying to see at what are the global trends, what could be applicable in a South African context. So we are not even at the stage where we're saying this is the route to go.
Yeah, look, because we have to look at modalities of how we keep an SABC going, because many people, some would say, but I don't even watch the SABC. But 5 million South African households are solely reliant on the SABC for information, entertainment, and education. But how would the streaming levy work? Why would my Netflix or my Amazon Prime or even my Showmax subscription have anything to do with the public broadcast in South Africa?
Look, and this is why I think there's just been reckless reporting on what happened with the parliamentary reply. That's a different debate altogether. We're looking at, for the public broadcaster, you're looking what is the best possible way using or relying on the TV license model, something that could be a substitute for that. And then in terms of streaming services, we are looking at what are the global trends that are happening in terms of contributions of those streaming services towards the countries in which they operate. As I did indicate, in some dispensations, you've got contributions happening towards local content production. In some dispensations, you've got instances where a percentage of the annual revenue of those services then gets contributed towards media development in those countries.
So let me just localize that thought. Yeah. So in some countries, there is a portion of, say, for example, a Netflix. It's written into some countries' legislation. If Netflix wants to operate in South Africa, then they must contribute to a local TV production fund, which then can keep local productions funded. That model's being used in some countries.
Yeah, that model is being used in some countries. And in terms of productions, those productions don't necessarily to be on the public broadcaster or any other broadcaster, but it's local productions that are in development of the arts and media spaces in the respective countries.
Minister, I do have you on the line, so it would be remiss not to ask you about issues around the conversion of SASSA gold cards to Postbank black cards. There has been thoughts of another extension of that deadline. The Postbank falls under the ambit of the Department of Communications and Digital Communications. Have you been happy with the way Postbank and SASSA have been dealing with this conversion, a situation in where millions of South African grants recipients' meager incomes fall on?
Look, to be honest, Lester, I'll be happy when I do not see the queues outside, the retailers where social grant beneficiaries are queuing to do the card switches. I'll be happy when we have, managed to migrate over 90% of the current social grant beneficiaries to move from gold cards into black cards. I'll be happy when no social grant beneficiary has to be, traveling for longer distance, queuing for several hours, spending, remnants of their disposable income in trying to do this switch. We are currently just at over 920 social grant beneficiaries who have switched from the gold cards into the black cards. In total, we've got just over 2.2 million SASSA beneficiaries who are still on the gold cards. So that just shows that we have made inroads of over just 35%. The likelihood of a further extension at this case is unlikely because there is a compliance process on the banking license of the Postbank, which has been granted by the Reserve Bank in terms of the timeline for which the switches have to be done. But over and beyond the 20th of March, social grant beneficiaries will still be able to do their switches from the gold card into the black card. The difference will be that if you need, for instance, to access your money from to withdraw your cash from the gold card, you'll need to go into the post offices. There will still be a cardless method that they would be able to access by going to retailers. So there won't be any social grant beneficiary, and this is the guarantee that I've been given by both the Postbank and the and SASSA, that there will not be an instance where social grant beneficiaries are inconvenienced from not accessing their monies.
Malatsi,
to your further
I have to leave it there. Malatsi, Minister of Communications, Digital Technologies.